Hey everyone, welcome to another Hot Topics with Humareso. It is my privilege and blessing to be here with my friend Sarah Morgan, whom I adore. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, John. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'm thrilled, actually, super thrilled. We've been kind of planning this for a couple of minutes here, right? Finally got
Yes,
together, so thankfully. Hey, Sarah, for people that aren't familiar with how awesome you are, would you give them kind of a little rundown of who and what it is that you do?
sure. I am Sarah Morgan. I'm the Chief Excellence Officer for Buzzaroonie LLC, which is my human resources consulting company. I work with startups and small businesses to help them create inclusive workplace cultures. I am also the writer and creator of the Buzz on HR blog and the producer and creator of the Leading in Color podcast.
Awesome.
And that's all about me.
That's enough. My goodness, you are super
Yes,
busy, right? So yes, please make sure you read her blog right after the Humareso one. Of course, make
of
sure you read
course.
Sarah's as well. Hey, I really appreciate actually some of the specificity you just mentioned there, because I think that some organizations that are on the smaller and startup end of the spectrum in industry may not be as thoughtful about inclusion, right? I'm
Mhm.
too small for that to matter, or I don't need to kind of have that perspective on it yet. Wait till my
Mhm.
second round of funding comes in or something like that, right? Um, from your perspective, there's so much going on, and we're going to get into it a little bit, but just briefly, why startup and small business? Because again, that perspective may be there. How do you kind of penetrate that mindset for some of those clients?
You know, the sooner that you can start creating an inclusive work environment, the more likely that that's going to infuse
Mm,
and build.
yeah,
And that's really what you want inclusion to be. So, the earlier in the life cycle of your organization that you can grab hold of that inclusion mindset and be actively and intentionally trying to cultivate that within the feeling of what it's like to work for your organization, the better off you are. So for me, when I was crafting my business and trying to decide like what types of clients that I want to work with, it was kind of a no-brainer for me to work with small businesses and startups because once you're a large organization, it's like moving it's the difference between moving a speedboat and a cruise ship and
yeah,
trying to turn that around. Once
yes,
your organization has been in existence for a while and has gotten into some of those not so good cultural practices, it's very difficult to break. And so the more intentional and the sooner that you can start to be intentional about how you craft that inclusive workplace mentality, the more successful that you're going to be at it, and the better off that it is. So I like to get in early and start talking to organizations about that.
yeah, and I absolutely agree with that perspective. I know I do, but for everybody listening, right? I totally agree because of the exact point. It's more maneuverable to help
Mhm.
those organizations be more thoughtful. Um, one of the um, current considerations I think that you and I both have heard quite a bit about is this term of being an anti-racist, and I
Mhm.
know for me, I hear in organizations quite a bit as a result of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the movement as a whole, the Black Lives Matter movement as a whole. I want to figure out right how to respond to that. What do I need to tell my team? John, because I'm not racist, right? And
Mhm.
this comes from startups, small business, very large corporations who are saying the same things. I'm not racist, but maybe we have to. What's the difference maybe there for some perspective between being an anti-racist and just saying I'm not racist?
The difference between non-racist and anti-racist is action. Non-racist is is not actively doing racist things. You don't necessarily, use the N-word.
Mm,
You don't necessarily, judge people based on their their race, or any of those other factors, because we know that they all intersect. So you're not actively doing anything that would constitute you to be, flagged or labeled as someone who's a racist. but you're not actively working to dismantle those systems either. Like, you recognize that you have privilege because of your education, your race, your gender, your gender identity, your socioeconomic status. Like, you recognize the privileges that come along with all those things, but you're not doing anything with those privileges to make it easier for individuals who are marginalized and who don't have those privileges to advance and come up and get themselves on equal footing. You're just not actively doing anything to dismantle those systems of oppression because they don't directly impact you. Right. And that's the difference between being non-racist and anti-racist. When you are anti-racist, you look at those things and you say, it doesn't directly affect me, but it's wrong. And I need to do something about it. And so I'm going to take the steps to educate myself and to then get involved in ways of dismantling that. And most people assume that means that, you're going to be out there with your mask on and a big sign protesting. And that might work for you, but there are so many other avenues of activism. And you just have to figure out what yours is. I consider myself to be an activist, but I also have anxiety disorder. And so being out in public spaces with things that are uncontrolled and not my jam. Yep. So I donate to the bail funds and to the food funds that make sure that the protesters have water and snacks and all of those sorts of things. And if someone gets arrested, that they have an attorney and that they can get out of jail. That's my way of contributing. I write to my Congress people. I vote. I lobby. I call. I sometimes even participating in social media. Like, there are lots of different ways that you can show your activism, in ways that you can donate your time and your talent and your money, to advance causes that don't necessarily require you they don't always look the same.
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, I think that you make a great point, because I think that some people are fearful that they're going to have to necessarily go march every day. And they think, well, I have to work, and what about my kids?
Yeah, how am I going to do this? Yeah.
How would I practically do it? And I think that there's some freedom, right, for us to say, not that we're the activism police, but people understand that you may not be able to march every day, but there are ways that you can certainly move outside of what's easiest or comfortable as well. Yeah. I mean, you and I, certainly you more than I will have to say, but both of us are, write. We share. Social media is a platform that we utilize for our businesses to share that information. And I know I can speak firsthand, even just publishing blogs that are direct about how this situation must change, the ways in which it should change. There are folks who stop following me as a result of, that, right? Of just even sharing that. And that's just the tip of all that can be done. So I'd say that because, you're going to experience adversity at whatever level, right? It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but it ought not to stop you from pursuing what is right.
Yeah, I agree.
Things that have to change.
Yeah, I agree. And you have to realize that it's important enough for you to be uncomfortable and to potentially lose those people, because why would you want those people in your circle of influence? Every time I block a person on Twitter, I celebrate, because you know what? I don't want my wisdom and my work to benefit you in any way. Let you go off and live in your ignorance and in your hatred and in your divisiveness, and let all the things that I'm trying to put out in the world that are good not impact you. So that's what that block button does. That's what that unfollow button does. And that to me is empowering. And I'm okay, with losing people along the way who disagree with my right to exist in the world safely, who aren't willing to stand up alongside me, or who are uncomfortable with me speaking my truth when that speaking of the truth is going to keep my kids safe when they go out into the world. If you disagree with that, I'm good with that unfollow. I'm good with that delete, with that block, or, and that separation, because clearly we weren't, as close as I thought we were anyway. So in that regard, it's all right.
And I think our self-confidence, right, has to be founded in something much more than how many people follow me on social media.
Exactly. And in that regard, I sleep well.
Both of us do.
Yes.
And I don't want to lose sight of, again, the work that's happening in industry, right, in the workplace right now. And of course, with COVID, things have been very different and tough for 2020. We have a lot more folks that are working remotely, both by mandate, perhaps in some of the areas where the business is located, that they can't return to the office the way that they maybe once had hoped to, or companies that have just made the decision to be extra cautious, right, and say, we've now tested the waters, we can operate remotely as a result of the mandate, and now we want to keep it that way. When it comes to racism, when it comes to, and I know that word is tough for people to take because they don't see themselves that way. So I'm going to say, in terms of racism, in terms of bias, and I don't want to just rest on unconscious bias. Let me tell everybody once again, if you know that you are biased, it's no longer unconscious, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's just, we have to accept that, right? It means that it's implicit. We see it now that it's there. But when you're working remotely, it may be more difficult for many of those cues, body language, facial expressions, some of the conversations that you may overhear if you are sitting, say, in the cubicle next to the conversation, to address issues of racism and or bias. What are some maybe initial thoughts you may have for managers or supervisors who now are managing a remote workforce for the first time, but still wanting to keep these considerations alive and make sure that they're being weeded out of the organization?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is that we're not seeing less microaggressive behavior happening in workplaces just because we've gone virtual. It's just morphed into a different type of microaggression. Because we're virtual and working from home, we have now invited our workplace into our intimate spaces. Many employees don't have the ability, they just simply don't have the space to designate an office. So they may be in their kitchen or their living room or their bedroom, and now your coworkers are in these intimate spaces. And I've heard reports of, there being, well, we're going to do a virtual luncheon. And now suddenly there are questions about what I'm eating and, what is that? And, those sorts of things. And not in curious ways, but in very judgmental ways. At points where barbershops and hair salons were closed. Well, now you have people who are gray when they weren't so gray before, or they're in hairstyles, I don't typically wear my natural curls and waves. I'm usually blown straight. I can't tell you the number of people that were like, how'd you get your hair done? I was like, I just washed it. This is what it does. I can't, this is what happens.
Yes. Right.
But yet everybody is like, oh my God, that's, those sorts of things. A lot of it is unintentional, but it's still uncomfortable. There are some people who may wear headpieces or hats or other kinds of coverings because they don't want you to see, their hair in those kind of unkempt ways because of COVID. And I can, I've remember having conversations with clients and also with people who will reach out to me on social media, and they're like, my employer is telling me that I can't wear a head wrap. What in the world? First of all, you're in your house and we're in the middle of a pandemic. Why are we policing people this way?
Right.
And so I think that would be, my first piece of advice is to not police people. You are in their intimate space now. By not really by their choice, this is, this is mandated in many ways, or it was the organization's choice not to reopen the office. And this person, so let's not push, that issue on top of everything else it is that they're dealing with. If you have employees on your team that are from diverse backgrounds that you may not necessarily be, as familiar with, do some research, try to understand, ask them questions, and ask them if it's okay, if they're willing to indulge your curiosities. And if they're not, Google will give you, some background information so that you can understand a little bit more, so that you don't end up accidentally saying something offensive out of ignorance and curiosity. So, that would probably be, my second piece of advice. And then I think the third thing is to just remain as open and compassionate as you can be, and make a consistent effort to try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And that can be difficult when you are, we all have diversity dimension. Even though I am, as I like to say, intermittently abled, I'm a Black woman, but I still am educated. I still have a certain earnings thing that places me in a different circumstance than someone else, and it gives me privilege. And so I have to recognize my own privileges and try to imagine what it's like for someone else who doesn't have the luxuries that I have, to exist in the world, and show compassion to that individual based on those things. And if we just try to be more open and compassionate, I think that we will find ourselves in a much better situation to be able to lead and to serve and to manage effectively during this time in particular, because people are already, the pandemic is hard enough. And then for people of color, Black people especially, who are dealing with all of this racial unrest on top of the pandemic that's already going on, no one needs to be micromanaged and microaggressed in this moment. It's not helpful to anyone, and it's not going to help us to be more productive or to achieve any of the things that our organizations want us to during this time.
That's not managing, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, yes, the context is different, but if you're using those kinds of tactics, the micromanaging, that's not really managing. What are you actually managing? Task or people? Right? Those are the questions. We still need to come back to that. From a leadership standpoint, who's helping to influence managers, talk to them about that. I think you make a great point about compassion. Listen, this is a really stressful time. People, their nerves are frayed or on edge a bit more because they've been inside for 4 months, and that gets old. Listen, I love my family. I'm telling you, they would start the car for me in the morning and say, "Get out!"
Get out.
Yes. That relational dynamic is hard on anyone from any kind of background, any socioeconomic class. That relational dynamic can get very tense. So if you come in as the manager and add to that tension, what kind of results are you hoping for?
Are you expecting?
Right. So, again, I think you make a really good case in those 3 points for people to just pay attention to those things. I've had to deal with, and I'm glad you brought up sort of the safe space, right? That we're bringing the employer into our personal space. I've been involved a bit more on the socioeconomic end of things. People seeing where you live. If your camera is, well, what's that?
Yep.
What's hanging on your wall? What kind of mask is that? Or what's this? All of a sudden, I never thought I was going to have to explain why I have this or I have that. Right? And it could lead to, even if it's very innocent, to your point, it's not necessarily that we're trying to do something malicious, but it could lead down a road that all of a sudden is really awkward to try to get out of, right? What it's going to lead to.
Yeah. And I think, it's okay to be curious.
Yes.
And I wouldn't ever discourage that. but it's important to, even in your curiosity, to ask permission.
Yes.
Because, and in a management context, you're never really asking permission because you're in charge. So there's the power dynamic exists where you are the person with authority and this other person doesn't have it. And so there's automatically a feeling that I can't say no.
Right.
And now it's like, I'm in my house. I don't really want to explain to you why I have this thing on my wall or this thing, but I feel like I have to because you're my boss. And so, you know, it's so much better to just loosen all of that up. And particularly when you're doing it on calls with other people, you know, I've heard stories of folks who are like, the next thing you know, they're like touring their house. And it's like, you look at your face. I know,
Right.
like, are you kidding me? Like, how did we get here?
Right.
And that just can't, you know, that can't be how it is that we exist. I've suggested to people doing like the virtual Zoom backgrounds. We did a couple of like contest weeks where we had like different themes in my day job in order to like prevent that, because some people don't want you in their intimate spaces that way. And another case, you know, they could be uncomfortable or embarrassed. You know, sometimes people have kids in the background or whatever it is. Like, I don't necessarily want you all up in that. And so here's this Brady Bunch background and that, you know, that, or whatever it is that I put behind me. So we, you know, you can gamify those sorts of things and try to make it fun, but make it inclusive in the same vein. You know, your favorite sports team or your favorite, you know, television show or whatever it is, it's still a conversation piece. It's still, you know, gives you an insight into that person, but it just doesn't require them to, you know, lay themselves bare for you. And that's what makes the difference.
Absolutely. Listen, in the minute or so left, I want to make sure that I get to touch on this awesome HROI Summit that you're put together, and talk a little bit about, just kind of give people sort of the heads up on what that is, when it's happening, how they can find out more.
Yes. So the HROI Summit is a 2-day online workshop. The first day we'll be talking about pay equity in the session called Org Better Have My Money. I took a little page out of Rihanna's book for that one. And we'll be talking about how you can perform a pay equity audit within your organization and what to do when you find disparities in order to address that in a way that's not going to break the bank of the organization. And then on the second day, we'll have a session called Antiracist HR, which talks about how you can take all these anti-racist concepts that we've just discussed here and apply that into your workplace, and looking at your policies and looking at your most common employee experiences through that anti-racist lens to make them more inclusive and equitable in how you're approaching it. So tickets are on sale now. The early bird is through August 8th, and then the prices will go up. I will be giving a discount to Humareso's subscribers and clients. So you guys will get a discount code from John here coming up soon. Of course, I got to look out for my peoples. So I'm definitely going to be doing that. But it's an online virtual conference. It's 2 half days, super affordable, very intense learning. And then you can upgrade your registration in order to join the coaching cohort. And that will give you 2 additional months with me and a team of coaches talking you through how to implement this once you get back to the workplace, because that's really where the work begins. Like sitting in the sessions and looking at this data, this basic data that we've created just for examples purposes isn't the real deal. The real deal is when you get back to your office and now you've got to go through your own data and you've got to try to convince the other decision makers. And then it's like, what do I do? Well, what you do is you come into the coaching cohort, you meet with me, you meet with the other coaches, you meet with the other cohort members, and we talk through all of that together. So I'm super excited about doing this. I'm just really excited about the possibility of being able to work so closely with other HR professionals to do this, because I can talk about it all day long, but the reality is we all got to get boots on the ground doing the work, and this is the start towards that for me.
And even in the way that today, quite honestly, we whet the appetite about talking about some of these issues. There's so much further to go.
Yeah.
And then the practicality of application. So I'm excited that you put this together. I'm looking forward to being a part of it as well. Thank you. I appreciate you very much. Thank you so much for taking this time with me.
Always. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Sarah.